The Devil's Candy is written and directed by Byrne, who also wrote and directed The Loved Ones, which was a bit of a cult hit. This film is about a struggling painter who gets a new house with his family, a young daughter and his wife, and suddenly he starts to hear weird sounds. And his paintings start to drastically change from beautiful butterflies to weird creatures and screaming children, and he doesn't know exactly what's going on. When he paints, he loses time. He'll leave his studio and realize that it's nighttime, and at the same time, there just might be a crazy guy on the loose, killing people with rocks. And it's good. I saw this movie on Amazon, I rented it, I was going to watch it entirely for leisure purposes, and I enjoyed this film so much that I couldn't help but turn on the camera instantly and start to talk about it. This movie is one of the better independent horror films I've seen in a long time. For one, the cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. The lighting, the position of the characters in the frame, whether they're in the foreground or the background, the way he cuts shots together to create almost a subliminal effect of being in some form of trance. This movie had me in its grasp from pretty much the beginning. This is a very short film. It's about 79 minutes long, and I would say that after about the 10 to 15 minute mark, I was pretty much riveted all the way to the end. This has a really good opening as well, with a fantastic and very underrated actor who is often typecast. Now that man is Pruitt Taylor Vince, who plays a very, very deranged person in this film. You may recognize him from the show The X-Files. He was in an episode. He was in the movie Identity, the movie Heavy. He tends to play very similar characters, and he knocks it out of the park in this movie because just about every time he walked on frame, he just gave me chills. He's such an unsettling presence in this film, and a lot of it does have to do with the fantastic editing. Also, I really have to give major props to Ethan Embry. This performance kind of blew me away. He is cut to shit in this movie, and he often paints in underwear, and he's got all these tats, and he just looks so aggressive, and he's so terrifying in the way that he approaches his art once he starts to hear these voices and they affect him, and you kind of get the sense of what's going on. I don't want to get into it because I honestly started watching this movie without knowing what it was about. It just looked promising and it had some pretty good reviews, and so I was like, all right, let's just watch this thing. So I don't really want to give you too many hints about what's going on underneath the surface, but I can basically say there's a creepy house, some shit happened there once, and now this guy is painting faces and he doesn't know why. And at the same time, there's a lot of family drama because he's losing time, as I said, when he starts painting in this studio, and sometimes he forgets the responsibilities that he has to do with his daughter and his wife. And Byrne is really smart to recognize that the best horror films aren't always about monsters or vampires. They're usually about some form of psychological trauma, something very basic that every human deals with, just amplified. My favorite horror film of all time is The Shining, and if you've seen The Shining, you know that, towards the last 10 minutes, Jack Nicholson grabs an axe and it becomes a horror movie, but up until then, it's mostly very psychological. Most of the horror in The Shining is really about a father who's neglecting his family because he's getting so sucked into his work, and then there's this crazy otherworldly force that is causing all these problems for him that's now amplifying the terror of his normal family trauma. And when you really look at The Devil's Candy, it's very similar in that way. You have a painter who's getting far too into his job, and there's some forces at work, and it's causing him to neglect his family. And so you could look at that and say, well, it's kind of similar, but it's just told in a different way. But all the best horror films are like this. They understand that the things that truly are scary are not necessarily these crazy creatures and monsters and ghosts, but what if something was just controlling you and it was making you neglect your family? That's kind of terrifying, and you can relate to that. All the performances across the board are really fantastic in this film. The last 5 minutes get a little ridiculous, but it was a ridiculous that I appreciated and almost respected. I don't know, this is weird for me this year. With A Cure for Wellness, Personal Shopper, and now The Devil's Candy, I'm seeing all these weird, fucked up movies, and I'm liking them a lot. It's like I like weird shit, I guess. And as I said, it is a very short film. It's about 79 minutes, and I feel like it could have benefited from probably about 15 more minutes of character building, character depth for this family. Just a little more weight to be given to these characters so that when shit starts getting really real towards the end, you can really feel it. but the direction and the editing was so strong, and Ethan Embry is so friggin' good in this movie that it really sold that entire third act, even though I would have liked to have seen a little more character depth. I'm gonna give The Devil's Candy an A-. As an independent horror film that I knew nothing about, just going into this movie, it kind of floored me. It's really well directed. I strongly recommend checking it out. It's available for rental on a lot of online platforms right now, and it is in some theaters as well. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.